Good morning, Aggies and Buckeyes. Today, we're going to be reading a story called My Big Brother, Johnny Caw. Now, remember, our essential question this week has to do with some of the reasons that people moved west. And in this story, we're going to read about one family's journey to settle in Kansas. Now, if you remember last week, I told you I wanted you to think about things that are happening in the story, and we called that visualizing what's happening in a story. Now, as you hear today's story, I want you to think and visualize some of the events that are happening in the story. I want you to put a mental picture in your head of what's actually happening. Now, we'll stop a few times during the reading to get a visualization picture in our head. If you ever want to pause and take a break to get a visualization in your head, hit the pause button. Now, you're also at the end of this lesson going to learn about cause and effect. So keep that in mind as we read. All right, here we go. I was just a tadpole of a girl when my family decided to leave the crowded city life behind. Now, when she says she's a tadpole of a girl, think about a tadpole. She's not really a tadpole, but you and I know that tadpoles are very tiny baby frogs. It's the first stage of the life cycle of a frog. So you can understand that she's really saying she was a little girl. Let's keep going. My daddy said, there are territories out west with wide open spaces. The Caw family needs room to grow. He was mostly talking about my big brother. At 15, Johnny had grown so tall that when he stretched out in bed at night, his head hung out of the front door and his feet hung out the back door all the way into the chicken coop where the hens laid eggs between his toes. That's a really tall brother. Mama loaded up the wagon with our belongings and Daddy hitched up the oxen. We began to head west, but it wasn't long until Johnny hollered for everybody to stop. Now, can you picture that happening in your head? Can you see the family moving west? And can you picture Johnny yelling, stop? I'm sure you can imagine their wagon stopping really, really quickly. We'll never get there with these slow pokes pulling us, Johnny scoffed. He unhitched the team and put one ox on each shoulder. Mind you, don't let them topple off, Daddy hollered. Yes, sir, Johnny said. Tadpole, keep an eye on 'em. He picked me up and set me on top of his head where I had to hang onto the handfuls of Johnny's red hair to keep from falling off. Can you picture that? I can. I can picture her sitting on Johnny, holding his hair. Then Johnny grabbed hold of the hitch and began pulling the wagon. That's an awfully strong brother, isn't it? He never did have much sense of direction. He pulled that wagon one way, then the other, faster and faster, digging out the biggest gully you ever saw. The next night, a big rain came and filled it up. I hear that now, they call that crooked gully the Caw River. Johnny pulled our wagon to Kansas settlement where people were trying to figure out how to raise crops. Problem is these mountains, one settler said. They are in the way. Johnny said that was no problem. He saw a big cottonwood tree, used a saw to cut it down, and whittled into a giant crop. Next, he whacked the mountains off down near the ground, hauled them west, and piled them up in a big row. Today, folks call them the Rocky Mountains. Everybody in Kansas was so happy with the nice flat land that they asked us to stay and homestead with them. We built a sod house and started planting wheat. Can you visualize what's happening in the story? Now, one summer, it was mighty dry. All of the wheat had started to shrivel up in the field. Our neighbors came and asked for Johnny's assistance. My crop has about withered away to nothing, said one neighbor. Without rain, we're done for. Hopefully you stopped and you visualized what the atmosphere and what the weather looks like where they're at in this part of the story. That's right, it's very dry. I've got an idea, said Johnny, looking up at some puffy clouds. He grabbed hold of his big hoe and commenced poking holes in the clouds. Down came the rain in buckets, and the wheat was saved. One morning at the riverbank, Mama was plunging our dirty clothes in the water to get them clean when a prospector rode up. Now, can you see Mama putting the clothes into a bucket of water and cleaning them? I can. He said he was headed to California to find gold. Trouble is, he said, there's not one decent trail between here and there. Wow, I wonder who's going to create the trail. You're right, it's probably Johnny. Mama said, let me talk to my son. Johnny was happy to help. For a week, he hiked back and forth to all kinds of places, dragging his giant bags of wheat everywhere. Clearing trails of trees, brush, and boulders, the Gold Rush folks were tickled to find good, clear paths that they named the Oregon Trail, the Santa Fe Trail, and the Chisholm Trail. Excuse me. I'm sure glad our family ended up in Kansas. Our neighbors tell us that this is a bad place for twisters, but so far we haven't seen one. I can't wait, though. Johnny plans to lasso that twister and ride it like a bucking bronco, and he's promised his little sister a ride. Now, that's the end of the story. Hopefully, you were able to pause and think about some of the things that were happening. I hope you were able to put lots of visual pictures into your brain to understand the story. Now, let's take a look at our second skill that we're going to be learning today. And that second skill we're going to be learning today is cause and effect. Now, cause and effect has to do with being able to identify what's happening in a text. So today, your learning goal is going to be plain and simple. I can identify a cause and effect in a text. Now, you might be asking yourself, what is a cause? And a cause is an event or action that makes something happen. Pretty simple, right? Now, with every cause comes an effect, and an effect is what happens because of that event or that action. Let's take a look at some examples. Now, you'll see at the top of your screen, it says cause with an arrow to effect. Now, when you go down to the table, I have replaced the arrow with the word so. Now, a cause usually happens and then an effect is always going to happen after. So let's look at one example. Johnny is extremely tall, so the effect is that the family decides to move west so they have more room. Now, Johnny, the second example, Johnny thinks the oxen are moving too slowly. So, Johnny pulls the wagon himself. What would be another example in the story from cause and effect? Hit the pause button right now so you can think of an example of a cause and an effect. Now, while you do that, I'm going to pull up another document so we can type into this one. Now, you're going to see some things pop on your screen, but go ahead and ignore them while I get the next screen going. All right, guys, hopefully you had enough time to think of a cause and an effect that happened in this story. Now, I thought of one as I was working, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to put it in to our cause and effect bubble here. Now, if you remember, there was an individual in the story who wanted to travel west, but he said there was no road to travel, so he could go look for gold. So let's put that into our map. Someone wanted to travel west to find gold, but there was no road. Now, hopefully you remembered that from the story. Now, since someone wanted to travel west to find gold, there was no road, so if you remember, Johnny created and paved a new road. That would be an example of cause and effect. Now, of course, there are many other cause and effects in that story, and this is just one example. Now, coming back on your screen, you're going to see your assignment for today. And your assignment is going to be to go to Wonders and complete pages 213 to 215. You may skip section B on page 215. Head over to Wonders now and complete your activity.